Let's start section 2 of our Pumpkins and Potions quilt with the 2-pieced plaid blocks. It's time to start section 2, and we will start with the plaid blocks on page 54. All of these fabrics do not have interfacing on the back. I have all 3 sets of fabric to make 2 blocks, and I have the batting. I really debated on whether to just use buffalo plaid print fabric, because this is exactly what our block's going to look like. And I actually bought some, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just do them as the instructions call for. It's always great to learn new techniques, and this is definitely something that I haven't done before. So I'm excited to get started on it. For the plaid block, we will go to embroidery and to the USB, and I will go to my embroidery files, and I will scroll down to find the plaid blocks. There's a part A and a part B, so we will choose the first one, which is part A, and hit set and embroidery. Now the hoops that I've been using have been larger, so I need to go up to the setting and change my hoop size. I am using what the book calls for, which is just a 5x7. I am just doing 1 block at a time, and we'll hit OK. And now I will stitch the template out. The placement stitch that it just stitched is this top line. The template has all of the rectangles, and this is the stitch that it just stitched out for the placement. So I am going to put my fabric, make sure that it's equal on each side, and then I'm going to put it right next to that stitching line. And then I am going to take the gray piece and put it right over. Now with the Kimberbell solid fabrics, they really don't have a right or a wrong side. If you have fabric that has a right and a wrong side, this will be, the black will be right side up, and the gray, whatever you use for that piece, will be right side down, so that the right sides are together. We will put this in, and it will stitch across, making a seam allowance, and then we will flip the gray over. Let's continue. We have finished the first block in part A, and we have 3 more to do. So it says finish embroidering, so I will hit OK. And now it's just ready to go for the second, third, and fourth. The second will be exactly the same with the black and gray, and then the third and fourth blocks will be the same pattern, but with the gray and the cream. Let's continue. are all 4 blocks, and now we just need to trim them. On these blocks, the final step was this outline of the whole block and these 2 inner lines. We will cut exactly on those trim lines, and we will end up with 3 strips per block. I have the edge of my ruler lined up right next to the stitch line, and I have it just slightly to the left so that when I cut, it will actually cut on that stitching line. And then I also have it lined up down here. So let's cut this first strip. I will continue to cut the outside border and then the 2 lines in between. Here's all of the strips. There's 6 of each color. There will be little threads because you're cutting right on that stitch line. You can go ahead and clean those off now. It doesn't really matter as far as the edges. Like this little piece, that will just get sewn into the seam allowance, but you can clean up some of the fuzzies and get these ready for our next step. Our next step is putting these together into a plaid block. Let's start part B. I need to go to embroidery, to my USB, and I'm going to start by bringing the quilting background in. So I will go to the quilting bundle, and this instructions say to use the Halloween 8, but I'm not really wild about that background quilting, and this doesn't have anything else on this block, so I am going to actually do both of them Halloween 9, block by block, and I need to find the 6 by 6. I'm going to set, and then I need to go to add, back to the USB, this time go to the embroidery files, and I need to scroll down and find that second part of the plaid. We just did this one for the strips. Now we need the second one to put the strips together, and select set. This looks like it doesn't fit. The template for the plaid block looks skinnier than the background quilting, and that's just because there is a piece that will go on this side and this side, and it doesn't really need to be stitched down in the block. So that's why they look like they're 2 different size blocks. That's just how we want it. They both came in centered, and so I will select embroidery. Now this will become one design. I'm going to move it to the top left. Remember, I have my stabilizer still connected to the big roll. It's down on the floor, and I'm on my 7 by 12. And again, I pushed it to the left just because I have an 8 by 12 in my machine and not a 7 by 12. So I want to make sure that it is a little bit to the left. Now, because we brought these designs in straight from the USB and we didn't do any combining in the software and take out steps that we don't need, we do need to make some changes as we stitch this out. So this first step is going to be the batting placement, and we do need that because we need to know where to place our batting. I've sprayed the back of my batting with some temporary spray, and I am going to place it right in that placement line. Now let's go back to the steps. The second step is the tack down of the batting. Well, we have ours already cut to size, so I don't need to run that. So I will use this down arrow to skip it. Now we're in the quilting because that's the first design we brought in. So the next thing that it's wanting to do is the placement for the fabric. And we don't have our fabric down yet because we're doing this a little bit different. So I need to skip that. Then this would be the tack down of the fabric. And again, I don't have any fabric yet, so I need to skip that. And then it wants us to do the quilting. Well, the quilting is going to be the last thing that we do. So I need to skip that also. So now we're ready to do the template. Let's stitch that out. Here is the template that it stitched out onto our batting. And then the next step is going to be the placement. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a little line with little dashes that is to line up our strips. So that is our first placement line for this block. Let's stitch that out. This inside line and these little dash marks is what just stitched, and these little dash marks line up with all of these lines right here, and that is for me to line up the seam with each of these lines. I am going to tape it, and then it will run a tack down. Now it's time to place our first gray and cream strip, and I need to line up, again, the seams need to line up with these lines. And if you look on the back, there are actually two seam lines. One's from the placement and then one's from the tack down. And so we are looking for this second little line to line up. So I am going to put it right next to, we don't want to do it to the edge of the fabric. We want to line up with the actual stitching. And then this seam, we want, of course, to line up with this seam. And I'm definitely going to tape. I will probably tape both ends and then along the side. Right now, those look like they're pretty lined up. So I'm going to tape those down and run the next tack down. Okay, I've taken the tape off and I'm going to fold this back to see how I did. And those look pretty good. I'm happy with that. So I am going to use my, it's called a Clover folding pen. It's got some probably liquid starch like Best Press. And this is called a folding pen, and you just run this along where you're going to fold, and it just helps it. I'm not really sure how, but I'm going to use a little bit of this. And then I am also going to take it over to my mini iron and iron it. I could just finger press, but I have my little mini iron set up right by my machine. So I'm going to go press that. Now I will continue the same steps. I will run the tack down, place my next strip, fold it, press it, and so on until I'm done with the 6 strips. I wanted to point out that on the black and gray strips, it's the top of these 2 lines on the stabilizer that we line up, and on the cream and the gray, it's the bottom. So now it thinks we're done with our project, but I need to get back to the background quilting. So I will select OK. And you can see now I'm back at the start of my design. I am going to skip until I get to the quilting. Now I will do the background quilting on the block. So while I think this turned out super cute and I'm glad that I changed the background quilting, I like this design so much better, I honestly don't think I would do these blocks again when you can just buy buffalo plaid fabric. This was a lot of work and a lot of time. I could have probably had 3 blocks stitched out in the time it took me to do this one. But, you know, I do have to say that it's always fun learning something. And so I'm going to rehoop, and I am going to do the next one. So I will just move this to the top so that I can again save on my stabilizer. So it's up at the top and I have my roll still attached. It will just hang off the bottom. So I've got this hooped up and I'm going to go do the second one so that we'll have that done when it's time to do our section 5. When I cut these and lined up the ruler, there were the placement lines on the top and the bottom, and I used those as kind of a guideline, but I measured these just to make sure that they were the same distance apart when I cut them, and they're ready to go.